Dr. Joel Rosen. I am the Adrenal Fatigue Recovery Ninja, and today I want to talk to you about the MTHFR scam by Dr. Mark Anderson. Actually, I don't even know if he's a doctor, but anyways, I thought it was an awesome title, the MTHFR scam, because MTHFR is a very controversial term out there, and he wrote this article about how MTHFR is a scam. And I wanted to address that because there's a lot of things that I agree about. I agree that nutritional companies are out there to exploit people, and they're out there to make a profit, and they're out there to utilize whatever information they can to hoodwink, swindle people, and get them to buy their products when maybe necessarily they don't need it. So I would agree in that case on the potential exploitations of nutritional companies. I would also agree that you can get methylated folate from nature. You can get it from leafy green vegetables. You can get it from a lot of different plant-based products, and you should be. And it's always food first. And I would agree 100% on that. I would also agree that we only need low dosages. You know, micrograms, 500, 300, 800. And some doctors or some nutritional companies are recommending 8 grams or, you know, and that's tremendous amounts, which can create a lot of different side effects. So you got to be really careful. And if you take too much, I would agree you're going to get bad symptoms like anxiety and headaches. So a lot of the times in the world of functional medicine, you have to undo what we're trying to do to fix things, and that has a lot to do with taking too many supplements. Supplement companies try to exploit you, not understanding that you can get a lot of these things in nature, and taking way too many things of stuff like synthetic hormones, too much methylfolate. So I would agree 100% on those things. But here's where I kind of get pissed off, excuse the language, but here's where I get really upset with a lot of the things that I disagree on. And listen, when you live in a glass house and you throw stones, you're always going to be subjective to criticism and ridicule, and I thought that this needed an important rebuttal. And you know, I call myself the Adrenal Fatigue Recovery Ninja, and I live in a glass house too, because a lot of people will say there's no such thing as adrenal fatigue. And what I would say to that is, who cares what we call it? Let's call it HPA axis feedback problems. Let's call it potentially autoimmunities. Let's call it secondary stress that causes pituitary problems, that potentially causes circadian rhythm problems, that potentially causes hormone conversion problems, utilization problems, proteomic effect problems. I don't care if you call it adrenal fatigue. Let's call it mitochondrial fatigue. Bottom line is, if you're going to accuse me and say, hey, you're throwing glass houses and you're saying that there's something as adrenal fatigue, you don't know me, because I don't just talk about adrenal fatigue. I use that as a way to people who have heard about adrenal fatigue to find me, and then I start the education process from there. And I think what happened with Mark is he doesn't know Dr. Ben Lynch. Now, Dr. Ben Lynch can speak up for himself. I am not his crony, but I just felt that it needed to be addressed. So here's some of the things. He says it's a scam. He says it's unscientific, and he said it's bad science. And I'll tell you that. That's like saying it's a scam when you're saying that the world is no longer flat. It's a scam when you say there's no such thing as gravity. It's a scam when you say that you know, information propels us forward, and then we realize that it's not only about genetics, it's about epigenetics. And it's a scam when you say that I haven't done my research on you, and you're just saying that MTHFR is the only thing you need to be concerned about. And that's not what Dr. Lynch is saying. He's saying that there are these genetic polymorphisms or susceptibilities, and MTHFR is just but one enzyme in an enzyme system of about 24,000 different enzymes that can all be problematic. On top of that, it's not only the susceptibility of the enzyme not working properly, it's also cofactors that need to be available to help the enzyme. It's also stressors that cause the demand for the enzyme to work harder. It's also inhibitors that slow down the enzyme, like medications and drugs and infections and cell danger responses. It's also things that can speed up the enzyme, like promoters. And it's also things like deficiencies in the body for the enzyme to not work properly. So you could have a quadruple whammy. You can have a SNP that doesn't allow the enzyme to work properly. You can have too much stress, which causes an increase in demand for that enzyme to work. You can have inhibitors that slow down that enzyme, promoters that speed up the enzyme, and cofactors aren't available. And it doesn't even matter what the enzyme is. And it's not only MTHFR. So for those reasons, I would 100% disagree with you. It's not a bad science, and you need to get updated, and you need to educate yourself on what exactly is being said. He also talks about it's an MLM scheme. I mean, he really has it out for Dr. Lynch. He says it's almost a cult. And the reason he says that is because Dr. Lynch has affiliate marketing. Welcome to the year 2018, where if you have a product, if you have an education system, if you have a company and you want to help build your company, they have now things called affiliates. And affiliates is if I give a commission to someone who refers someone to my site so that I am able to educate that person, give that person value, try to turn around their health, try to give them more information that they know about, and you're telling me that I have a cult or I have a multi-level marketing company because I pay an affiliate to educate my people and get them to drive them to my practice. I don't think that's the definition of a cult or a multi-level marketing scheme. So that's incorrect as well. As well, he says that MTHFR is purported to be a cure. It's not. It's not purported to be a cure. It's purported to be an enzyme that doesn't allow you to make methylfolate that's necessary for over 250 cellular reactions, like building hormones, building neurotransmitters, repairing cells, detoxifying. And what really upsets me is that if this was such a problem, you would have a disease. And because there's no disease, then this isn't a problem. Last time I checked, that the CDC is not even reporting about autoimmunities anymore because the world is completely, there's more autoimmunities to count for. And it's the first time in the generations that our younger generations are not going to outlive us. And there's more chronic illness than ever before, but it may not be a specific disease, but last time I checked, the world is a lot sicker, a lot more unhealthy than it's ever been before. So he needs to get his facts checked on that. And I think a lot of the arguments that he says is very, very hypocritical. I'm going to have to take it up from here, and so because there's a couple things that I want to quote from here. So he says, all you need to do is check homocysteine levels. He says here, if the homocysteine levels are not high, then there's no problem with methylfolate. And that's completely inaccurate. If you look at the Metametrics Handbook for clinical reference, it's actually the second edition. It talks about if homocysteine levels are low. And if you have homocysteine levels that are low, you're depleting your sulfur stores, and you have elevated toxicants, you have oxidation challenges, and you're depleting your glutathione. And you know what? That's like saying if you have high anemia in terms of a macrocytic anemia, that's the only problem with anemia. But if you have a low red blood cell, then you don't need to look at the values only when they're high. And that's like saying, okay, only if homocysteine is high will that tell you if you have a methylation problem. Completely incorrect. And even what's the scary thing about it is that Cleveland Clinic is even saying this too. And that's not true. And they say all you need to do is look at homocysteine levels to know if you have a methylfolate problem. Completely untrue. You can have methylfolate not necessarily working so great, but it's enzymes above it, it's enzymes below it, it's cofactors that aren't available, it's inhibitors like medications, cholestyramine, NSAIDs, hormone replacement therapies, infections, thyroid problems that will slow down that enzyme. And you can also have upregulation of toxins like metals and chemical exposures that's worse than ever in time, and it depletes your homocysteine levels, and you're going to say, well, there's no problem with methylation there because homocysteine is low. Wrong. Or you can have normalized homocysteine where you have blockages in your homocysteine recycling, which would cause it to go really high, but then you also have depletion of homocysteine, and it looks like it's normal, and you're saying, no, all you need to do is look at homocysteine and say that if it's not high, then it's normal. Completely wrong. Mark, you need to do your research on that because that's completely wrong. The other thing I would say is with homocysteine, that is not the best marker. The best marker is SAM to SAW ratios. And if you're seeing that your SAM to SAW ratios are compromised and the SAW is too high, then that's not a recycling of that homocysteine. And that could be because homocysteine is blocked or homocysteine is escaping too quickly and it looks normal, and you're saying, nope, it's not a problem, but you got to look at your SAM-SAW ratio. So you're completely wrong on that. And that really, really upsets me because you need to do your research on that. He also talks about the fact that basically, this is a scam. This is a problem with trying to hoodwink the population and say, hey, it's all about methylfolate, and now Dr. Lynch is trying to cover his tracks and put on his website, hey, you only need to take a little bit of methylfolate. Dr. Lynch never talks about only taking methylfolate. In fact, he talks about it only being an epigenetic concern and understanding some susceptibility. So what I always tell patients is it is a genetic susceptibility. You have a loaded gun. And if you have environmental triggers going off all over the place, you're creating that perfect storm, and you could have a problem whether your homocysteine is high, whether it's low, or it's normalized. And I think Mark needs to learn about that. And then the last thing that I'll say that really upsets me is he is hypocritical. He's talking about, you know what, this is kind of like the way that the pharmaceutical companies look at things, and they look at it in terms of a reductionistic model. And they say, take this for that, take that for this. And they don't look at it in terms of a pathway, a mechanism model. But meanwhile, Mark's whole argument is a reductionistic argument. And it talks about how he says this and all you need to do is that. And he hasn't done his research, and that's a very reductionistic model. So I thought that it needed to be cleared up. And then the last thing that he says here is that he talks about the ancient symbol of the Ouroboros, where the serpent devouring its own tail, believing something is different when in reality it is the same. I tell you to look in the mirror and realize that's your whole argument about the MTHFR scam. So I just felt like it needed to be addressed. I think that people need to do their research, and they need to, put their head in the books and understand what's really going wrong. And that's the sad thing, is that the Cleveland Clinic is quoted on here, and the Mayo Clinic is quoted on here and saying, hey, these guys don't look at genetics or MTHFR because they know all they need to do is look at homocysteine. Wow, these clinics that you're having way more chronic health illness than ever before, you're having escalating healthcare costs than ever before, and the health system is failing. And the health system is sicker and more suffering than ever before. And then you're going to quote and say that the Mayo Clinic and these other clinics are the best clinics in the world. And if they say it's not a problem, it's not a problem. Really? You know what? It saddens me that the MTHFR scam has gotten so much press. And like I said, there's things that I agree with, but there's a lot of things that I disagree with, and you need to get educated. Anyways, my name is Dr. Joel Rosen. I am the mitochondrial fatigue ninja, and I look forward to ending your mitochondrial fatigue nightmare. Thank you and have a great day.